Yeah, today we're at the Y Combinator office. Gonna give you guys a demo of Juxta's platform and walk you around a little bit. So you probably don't think about it much, but GPS actually fails almost everywhere. Humans and objects spend 90% of their time indoors or in other areas that GPS can't reach. So even in the YC office today, like if I zoom in on this map, it currently thinks I'm somewhere in the YC office, and if we watch it far enough, it's just gonna bounce around for a while because it doesn't really actually understand where I am. So this is a huge wide open space, right? We're in a brick building, and there is literally no way for GPS's signals to penetrate into my phone here. And so this might seem like a small scale issue in this use case, but imagine this floor plan is a battlefield in Ukraine, a thick forest where Ukrainian soldiers are trying to find, their teammates. They wouldn't be able to do that because GPS jams, it emits a lot of signal, and it's inaccurate anyway. Imagine this is a big factory floor where thousands of workers with expensive assets are operating every day. There is no visibility into that workflow. What we've set out to do is take research from an academic setting about inertial measurement units, which are sensors inside of every device that we use today, mobile phones, embedded devices, robots, etc., and actually use that to position where you are within about half a meter of accuracy anywhere on Earth. This could be outdoors, indoors, underground, but any place that a human or an object could go is one where we can follow you with this tracking mechanism. And so we'll show it to you here with the demo. What's important to remember is that we're using sensors on device that are already installed by the manufacturer, like accelerometers and gyroscopes, meaning that we're able to track somebody anywhere that their device or wherever they have their IMU chip is already enabled. We're not relying on satellites that are thousands of miles above us or even beacons that are in other rooms or walls throughout a complex indoor facility. And so this means that with really high resolution, we can monitor movement in any environment that a user or an asset is, as long as they have these sensors on board. It's a really cool technology that previously has never been possible and has been researched in academia, but never really brought to a scalable level. And now with Juxta, what we've built is able to really kind of open up the door to the next frontier of tracking and navigation that we think will ultimately replace GPS and have 10 or 100x the reach. So it's called procedural generation, and we actually, this is the real life, I screen recorded this previously, but this is the real life 3D generation of the 2D floor plan you just saw. And we simulate, in this case, like thousands or millions of people or whatever else we're trying to track moving through this space. And basically what happens is they gather sensor data as they walk, artificial sensor data as they walk. So like they're moving throughout the space, and we know, hey, if they have this initial point and they're now at point X and their sensor measurements are A, B, and C, and that happens millions of times over, we can start to generate with pretty high confidence that other people will also be at point X if their measurements are A, B, C in the real world. Right. So we're basically creating this cross-reference between simulated data and real life data that's all sensor powered.
So you have this string of samples of whatever someone's phone is saying their movement has been, and then you basically cross-reference that against what you've simulated.
Correct.
To kind of know where they are.
Exactly. I see. Yeah, so it's really cool stuff, right? And like this is a lot of what our IP is surrounding. We have patents pending around this sort of stuff.
Right.
Sorry. We have patents pending around this sort of stuff. And we call it synthetic fingerprinting. And that's kind of like what we think is our big breakthrough.
Right.
And so previously, any sort of approach that didn't even use no hardware, we relied on, like, the people had to actually go to whatever space they wanted to map, walk around with their own data collection tools, gather sensor data, and then train on that.
So they'd manually do this.
It's called manual, fingerprinting. And so what we've done is we've created synthetic fingerprint, and that was also, like, again, that's not really scalable in a commercial way because it takes so long. And so you would see that in like academia.
Researching this, I saw that you had a background in journalism, and I was just wondering, how does someone go from being a journalist to solving global navigation?
No, it's a good question. I mean, so it probably starts with the fact that a very important part of what's influenced a lot of my life is that both of my parents were physicians and captains in the US Navy. And so that meant for a significant portion of years in my early life, they were deployed to places like Afghanistan, places in Asia, where they weren't often, didn't have reliable internet. But even then, I could never see where they were. I never, as a 5-year-old, knew where my dad was in Afghanistan. And you would hope that you would hear from him over email or something like that every couple of days or a week or so. I got a little older. It makes you think, like, why is this a shortcoming? What is the pitfall of this? And that's kind of how I started to learn more about GPS and learn more about why it doesn't work and what kind of got me interested in the space. I got into like startups and tech when I was in high school, like 14, 15. I learned how to kind of build basic websites and then gradually more from there. And when I applied to college, I thought, how much like value will there be? How distinguished am I to learn how to code versus learn how to tell a good story? I knew how to code like at a fundamental level, and I was like, what is the margin? What is the margin that I can put between myself and other people who know how to code at the best level? I mean, there's obviously amazing engineers, but probably not quite as significant as somebody who can tell a great story and someone who can tell a good one. The value in the margin there is probably super steep. So I went to school for journalism with the idea of wanting to become a better storyteller. At Northwestern, which is one of the best journalism schools in the country, like I was largely able to do that, but still didn't like love it because it felt like I was on the sidelines reporting stories, and I wanted to be like in the mix, kind of making these differences.
Once we get to like actually like go down a little bit into the park, and also the wind dies down. Damn, it's gonna mess up my hair on camera. Joe is a great companion, and one of the most underrated parts about having him is it forces me to take like multiple little 15-minute mandatory breaks throughout the day to walk him around here. It's like 2 blocks from my apartment. I get some vitamin D. Like it's a good exercise. The first week I was here, I got him. It was YC orientation, and so it was just like I was out of the house all day. And I remember calling my mom being like, Mom, I have no idea how I'm gonna take care of a dog. Like why on earth? Because of course I bought him without telling anybody, so she didn't know. She would have probably advised me not to do that. So I dropped out of Northwestern about after my sophomore year at Northwestern. I joined YC summer batch, so about a year after I dropped out of Northwestern is when I joined YC. And it's been super fun. Like it's obviously been a dream like long for me in the making. But I'm super happy I'm doing it. I had actually interviewed for YC once before with Juxta and did not get it. And then I interviewed again, and it's so funny because it's like the first time I interviewed, you know, we didn't get in, and you know, I left that interview being like, oh, I don't know what they're gonna say. And that probably was my sign. If you don't know how that felt, it probably means no, because of how selective they are. Like they're not gonna take maybe. If it felt maybe to you, it probably felt no to them, is my kind of the way that I thought about it, or I think about it now. And you know, as mad as I was, because I was like, oh, this is like a dream that I've wanted for so long, I didn't get it. You know, you have this urge sometimes when like investors reject you, and especially like someone like YC, who's like what you've wanted for a long time, to send an email back that's like, I'm gonna prove you wrong, like whatever. And thankfully I didn't do that because that was before we had pivoted.
I've seen people tweet that.
Yeah, they tweeted that, and I'm like,
it holds you to this public kind of.
Yeah, well, also I'm just like, do you think that they're like, why would they have when they have a 0.5% acceptance rate? Why are they gonna take somebody who just like hates on them? Just be like professional, because also that's how business is. Like you can't, if you just hate on every one of your customers or competitors like in that way, it's just a kind of pretty bad standard. And they were also totally correct in their assessment because that was before we pivoted into the universal system.
Right.
That was just a healthcare company.
We were a
healthcare company.
I see.
And
was it location tracking?
It was location tracking for healthcare.
I see.
Which was like objectively a far less good idea because it's a slow sales cycle on a smaller market. And so they had every right to say no, and I'm glad they did because it forced us to think harder about it. And then that's when we pivoted in that 3 months to what is now like the universal system that we think of today. And that's when we got in. I had an interview with Tyler, who's my group partner, did that one, and I got off the call and I was like, yes, we definitely got in. And then I get a call a couple hours, like 11 p.m. that night from Tyler offering us a spot.
So you joined YC. How's the experience been so far?
Yeah, it's super fun. You know, you see so much about it on Twitter. It's hard to like, if you are into that sort of thing, it's hard to like really envision what it can even be like personally. I think it is definitely the highest concentration of like hyper intelligent, hyper ambitious people I've ever been around, which is super refreshing and really inspiring. It makes you work a lot harder because you don't, it's like imposter syndrome, but it's not even a syndrome, it's just real. Like everybody there is so good that the odds of you actually like legitimately being number one is quite low. And so it's not even really like you think you're not good enough. Like it's just that you are actually like objectively probably not number one. And so the goal is always try to be that number one spot. And so it's been a really good experience, like working hard, being around really stimulated minds. And you know, the partners are super helpful in giving advice and office hours and all the kind of classic stuff you hear about, of course, as well.
Would you say you're like a competitive person? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably rare for like most. I don't know. I don't want to say. I don't know if every startup founder is competitive, but I have a hard time imagining how you succeed without being one. I mean, I remember like, you know, it's embarrassing to me now, but like, I would like sob over losses in games that were my own and that were not my own.
This
like
is when you were a journalist, right?
Yeah, I would cry when the Ravens, the NFL team that I like, would lose like a playoff game as recently as age like 17. It doesn't like, and which is like kind of embarrassing, but it's just hard for me to like let go of things that easily. I remember my family played Catan all the time, if you ever played that board game. Yeah. Oh my God, the amount of tears I've shed over Catan in high school because my dad and my sister would gang up on me to not trade with me and put some embargo on me. I couldn't handle it. And so like I've always just been very competitive in that way. I remember, I think one of the reasons I like startups is startups are just like this huge meritocracy. Over maybe in a short periods of time, there are like shortcuts, but in the long run, the market and people's money goes to what adds value to their life. It's pretty hard to fake that. And so it's like the truest form of competition. There's almost no like referee. I mean, there's like regulations, but there's no like referee that's telling you these certain rules. You can really, it's like maximizing free will. You can do anything and compete anywhere. I also like, remember, this is my biggest pet peeve, and I vow when I have kids, I'll never do this. I hated when my parents used to tell me I'd play rec baseball in Little League growing up. Another embarrassing story of mine is that I once went 15 games in a row without getting a single hit, which is like almost impressive how you can go 15 games, which is like probably like 50 at-bats total when I didn't get a single hit. But I was so competitive I wouldn't want to stop, and my parents would tell me on the way home, it's just a game, like it's just a game, it's okay. And nothing ever made me more upset than hearing it's just a game. It irked me to no end. And so I feel like that's probably pretty representative of how I feel now about Juxta and everything else I do, that like, it's never just a game to me. At minimum, it's like winning, which is always what you want to do. And at maximum, it has real world applications and implications like Juxta does.
So Paul Graham reached out to you and he wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
What was it like getting an email from Paul Graham?
Well, it was really cool, and you know, PG is like is probably the most normal, like hyper successful person I've ever met, and not normal as in not exceptional. He's very exceptional, but normal as in like extremely kind, approachable, you know, in that way. And so it wasn't quite as daunting maybe as you'd think it was, because I got that email from him on like a Saturday night that said, "I'm interested in meeting you. Do you want to come down to my house?" And I was like, sure. Of course, his house is relatively inconspicuous in Palo Alto. It's nothing crazy. And yeah, so I went down there the next day, talked to his son for a while I waited for him to be ready. And then we just talked in his backyard for like an hour. And he like immediately, I think, or you know, pretty quickly at least got what Juxta could be. I think he obviously is he's probably like, you know, fairly, he wants to see it, you know, proven like everyone else does, and like we want it to be proven out. But I think he sees that the upside for something that's like a GPS alternative that can track anywhere on Earth is really large.
Right after we actually just finished our interview, we were talking about fundraising.
So the fundraising calls officially don't start with YC until August 23rd. Today, for anybody who's watching, it's August 22nd. So it's officially before the fundraise opens. But we've been fortunate enough to already raise about like $1.7 million of the $3 million total that we're trying to raise in this round, because a lot of it has been preempted by different angels and a couple different firms, which has been really nice and really fortunate. It's actually, you know, so far every single firm and angel that we've spoken with has invested.
I think it's 11 out or 12 out of
12. It's something like 12 out of 10, maybe 10 or 11 of them. Yeah, all of them have so far invested, which is something that like I have never experienced. And I've gone through plenty of rejection, and I'm sure that I'm cautious to say that obviously that means very little in the context of a long term of health of a startup. Right. There's a lot more to fundraising or to a company than just checks from fundraising. But you know, it's hopefully a nudge that we're going in the right direction in terms of, I think a lot of people are understanding the scale of the vision and how big this could like really be.
In 10 years, where do you think Juxta will be? And like, where do you want the product to be? Where do you want to be?
In 10 years, I hope that Juxta like really makes true of its name of the universal positioning system.
You want to replace GPS?
Yeah, I want to replace GPS and more. I want to cover 10 times the space that GPS does, right? 90% of all human and object movement is invisible to GPS now. I think we can, you know, by an order of magnitude, increase the amount of time and space that location is monitored on Earth. And in 10 years, I hope that Juxta not only monitors location in every indoor and outdoor space, but literally anywhere that humans and objects go. So like underwater, in space, maybe on Mars. Like there's no reason that it wouldn't work in like theory. Not saying that it won't be hard, and it will be hard, but I don't, that is like the vision I think that is attainable in 10 years, because eventually when this technology works as well as we know it can, there won't be a reason why anybody would use anything else.